We're super excited about today's episode because we're talking about one of our very favorite places. It's Montana's most visited state park. It's home to the world's shortest river, gorgeous scenery no matter what time of year you go. We're learning all about Giant Springs State Park on this episode of We're No Damn Experts.
Best damn podcast, the best damn town. You want to get up, get ready to get down. With its big wide sky and the wild river tame. If you want to go, we can take you there to Great Falls, Montana.
Welcome to the greatest damn town in Montana, Great Falls. I'm Rebecca Ingham.
I'm Shannon Newth,
and we're No Damn Experts. Today in our studio, Shannon, you may or may not know, you might know, but our guest helped with the most epic photo shoot we have ever had in our lives.
I know about the photo shoot because this was one of the first things my husband did when he worked here. Yes.
So I can't imagine what it was like on his end to get this call, but people, we took mermaids and photographed them at Giant Springs in the winter. On a BMW motorcycle.
It was pretty epic. Those were pretty cool pictures.
Alex, thanks for making that happen. Alex with the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and the manager of Giant Springs State Park, the maker of Dreams Come True.
Mermaid Dreams.
Welcome to our podcast.
He's like, that's not what I was expecting for my intro.
No, it's good. It really sets the stage. So.
Yeah, it really explains, which really... What was it like to get that call? I mean, somebody calls and like, hey, we want to put a motorcycle down in the state park and then throw mermaids up and down on it all morning in the winter. And the weather had just broke, so it was only like 10 degrees versus the 30 below zero it had
That's
been.
That's what the weather breaking here means, is that it's 10 above instead of below.
You know, it's not the weirdest request that
I was
I've
actually
gotten.
going to ask you. I was like, is that the weirdest? No.
But, I think the time of the year was a little odd for sure. Wouldn't have been my choice if I was the mermaid, but I think it made for some good photos.
The photos were epic.
Because there was like the steam, right?
Well, and then this is probably illegal, but we had to do some harassing of the wildlife. We walked near the spring and then the birds would fly away.
So by harassing, you just mean disturbing the peace.
Yeah. Which could be construed as harassing.
Sure. Yeah. I just wanted to clarify you weren't
shooting at
something more. Yeah.
No.
No, they like,
Alex
they like to congregate.
Out.
Yeah, they like to congregate right there in the spring and the winter. So it's part of the deal down there. You gotta make room for yourself sometimes.
Yeah. Like they're not big into moving when you get down there.
Well, also that, and we'll get more into this, but that stays a nice constant temperature in there when it's very cold outside. So I don't blame them for wanting to hang out there.
Yeah, it's like almost like a little sauna or a nice experience for them in the wintertime to be in that warm water.
So let's just be clear. In our photo shoot,
yes,
we did not put mermaids in the spring.
That seems not okay.
We made the request, though. After the shoot, and Alex, you could see the fear in Alex's eyes.
He's like, oh no.
I don't want to say no, but this will take a little bit more work. He never said no.
Oh.
He left that door just ajar. And he said it's going to take a lot more work.
A wordsmith. He was able to say no without actually saying no.
I don't think he ever will say no to us.
We are definitely very conscious of the popularity of the springs and what allowing people to
opening that door
to be in the springs will do. So it's something that we're pretty conscious about in making those decisions. And
so one of the coolest things, we'll get into a lot of stuff, and we're going to jump around a lot because that's the way we work. But people go into the spring to clean it, which I found the strangest thing
I
ever.
didn't know that. It's not like a self-cleaning system?
No, Alex will tell you more.
Okay.
Yeah, so the springs, the conditions in the springs are perfect for some of Montana's native plants. Yellow monkey flower, watercress.
Well, that's a fun name.
So, they grow really well in the springs. And if we left it kind of unchecked, they would sort of choke off the whole area and people wouldn't be able to see down into the water, how deep it is, how clear it is. So we've made a nice partnership with the local dive club where they can come and dive in some clean water. It's the Missouri's not exactly crystal clear. A lot of the rivers in the state aren't super clear. So the springs is obviously very clean and clear. And so it's a good opportunity for them to get in and test their equipment. And it also helps us by, pulling up some of those plants and giving everyone a good experience where they can see into the springs. Because that's part of the magic down there is being able to see into the water. The springs is the park's namesake. So being able to see that water bubbling out of the earth is pretty cool.
That makes me want to join the dive club just so I can be part of that.
We often joke with folks that want to see all the falls. We tell them there's 5 falls. And the 5th fall has to be seen if you want to scuba dive. That's how you see the 5th fall.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they giggle a little bit and they're like, well, where do we get our gear? And I'm like, A to Z scuba.
Yep.
Because it all exists here.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, you're serious? And we're like, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you go scuba, please tell us or take pictures because I don't know anyone who's done it, but
But is there garbage that ever collects in the giant spring? Because I've never seen a more pristine area in the world.
And I hope people aren't. I mean,
So
we
I'm
do
hoping
have
the answer-
wind, so it could get blown in, I suppose. But
Yeah, I always like to say that wind is the reason that we have all the trash we do because it blows out of cars. Every once in a while, inadvertently, someone will drop something in there, and we'll fish it out with a net or something. But the spring produces 156 million gallons of water every day, so it does flush a lot of stuff out of there. Not the vegetation that takes root in there, but it is a really clean area naturally. People do respect it down there, so it's not an issue that we have often where we have to go in and grab things. More often, it's a kid drops a stuffed animal in there.
I was going to ask, have you ever had anybody like an earring or like a ring, like something like a cell phone, like something valuable get dropped in there?
Yeah, every summer we get a cell phone. The dive club was there last summer, not this summer, but last summer. With the mission of trying to find a wedding ring that was lost there the previous year.
I'm going to ask questions because they come to my head. Feel free to just say, hey, Rebecca, we're not going to discuss that. And we'll move on. And I'm fine with that. But you're going to call a dive team in for a wedding ring. And I get the importance of that. Actually, just had the discussion with my husband about wedding rings in general. But who pays for that? It's not really the park's responsibility. So it's the guy's like, no, we need that wedding ring. I will pay whatever it costs to get it out of the spring.
So I don't know the whole story on it.
The taxpayer.
I think the dive club was already planning on being there to do their annual cleaning. So it wasn't a special trip for them, but it was kind of a special mission during their annual fall cleaning of the springs.
Well, that makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
So it's something
so
that
you don't get special calls. You don't get to call.
We have an emergency at Giant Springs.
The dive team respond ASAP.
Well, I know. So I went for a hike quite a few years ago with my dog, and my dog was by the Dearborn River. He went into the water. The water was fast. He started floating down the river.
No. That's
and I freaked completely out. So I, did what every normal dog mom would do. I jumped in after him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time I had gotten all my stuff off to jump in after him, he was watching me jump in because he's a dog and he just got out of the water.
He just swam
so
out.
fast forward, we're up in the Little Belt near on the Judith River. The water's just rushing. And the dog slips and falls in. And my husband is there this time. And of course, my immediate response was, I'm just going to push him in. my husband in to go get him.
Not ask him, just shove him.
Yeah,
in the
I was like, I was on my way, and I'm like, you need to go in after him. He's like, he's a dog. He will get out of here. I'm just going to tell him to get out over here. So, has anyone ever pushed their spouse into Giant Springs?
Oh, I thought
to
you were
go
going to ask
after
about dogs. This
an
took
earring?
a turn. Well, yeah. Fair.
If I drop something in the spring, I now know my natural reaction is
to
going to be
push
push my
Robert.
husband into the spring as it happened.
Oh,
Alex
we'll
is just gonna
keep
see
an eye
you
for you
coming
next
and-
time
yeah.
you're down at the park.
He's just going to
We never go there
turn
together.
the other way if he sees you there. Yeah.
No. Again, people lose things, and it's we'll do our best to retrieve them for them. But a wedding ring in that pool can be hard to find. And,
Yeah.
there's a lot of turbulence down at the bottom with the water bubbling up from the aquifer. So it's not always as easy as just hopping in and finding something.
Yeah.
So
have you had dogs jump in to it?
yeah, I'm sure there have been dogs, and people will go in there every once in a while if we don't catch them.
Yeah.
But it's not exactly safe either. There's the
Yeah.
rock band around the outside of the springs, and I'll have to walk on that every once in a while to collect shoes or stuffed animals or hats and things for people. And it's like the rocks are covered in ice. They're very slippery.
Yeah.
And we are currently down there rehabilitating the rock wall that goes around the giant springs.
Oh.
And we have a contractor working for us down there doing an excellent job, but he's spent almost the last year working on about half of the rock wall that goes
my
around the
gosh.
springs, very labor intensive. So, we're also cognizant of that rock wall and its importance to the spring, and making sure that the public doesn't damage it by getting down there and trying to get in the springs as well. So there's a number of reasons why we have the no swimming rule that the public doesn't often think about, but it's very enticing. It's very
Yeah.
enticing for people. The main question we get is it a hot springs? Like,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, no, it's not. The water's warm, but
Yeah.
not that warm.
Right.
So one of the things I say about Giant Springs, it is the world's largest natural spring. Is that a true statement?
It's one of the country's largest natural springs. There's some other really large springs around the country. Florida has some big ones, but it's one of the nation's largest freshwater springs.
So
Okay.
maybe stop saying world.
I'm gonna stick with it.
This is what she does.
It sounds great.
It does
and I
sound
know
great.
from Alex's perspective, he needs to be a little bit more particular. I'm just going to have people go, oh, well, I think this. And honestly, in 8 years, there's been one person that's like, it's bigger than Mammoth Springs. And I'm like, yes, it's bigger than Mammoth Springs. I don't even know where
We don't
Mammoth
know what Mammoth Springs is.
You're selling the town. You're
Yeah.
doing your
It's
thing.
true.
And so
Yeah.
eventually someone's going to go, well, I don't think it is, but kudos to them. They've done the research to prove me wrong. And I've never claimed to be an expert. So
I mean,
you're taking
that's true. That's the name of the podcast.
I'm
Yeah.
willing to argue it's one of the most beautiful springs in the country.
Oh,
in the world.
100%.
So
Absolutely.
I'm willing to go out on a limb and say that.
For sure.
It is Montana's most visited state park.
Yeah. Which I think would surprise some people. But
I would agree.
once you're here, I'm not surprised. Once you go see it.
And it's in town. This is the
Which
thing
is a
that's
really
so
nice part.
weird. Like, it's not right like in the heart of town and there's buildings all around it, but it
But
is
it's in town.
in town, and it feels like it's a completely different world.
Yeah. It's its
Yeah,
own little oasis.
I think that's what makes it so cool down there is, again, we're kind of surrounded by the city limits there. We're technically not in them, but we're surrounded by them. So it's basically in town.
Yeah.
And it is, it's over the years, it's been a very well-maintained area. So, it's all surrounded by that kind of prairie landscape, but it's this little oasis in the prairie with huge mature trees and the springs and the river. So it's an incredibly beautiful place. It is the most visited state park in Montana. We get anywhere from 300,000 to 500,000 people a year that visit the park.
Ooh.
So it's very popular. I think that one of the main reasons it's so popular is the locals in Great Falls love the park. It's such a big part of growing up in Great Falls. Over the 3 years that I've been here, I can't even begin to count how many stories I've heard from locals about the importance of the park in their childhood, in their life. So it's cool being able to be there every day and hear those stories from the locals and how much it means to them. And then, we're on the route between Glacier and Yellowstone. So we get a lot of visitors coming through in the summer to see the park. So it's really a pretty busy place, unless it's one of those negative 20-degree days in the winter. Then it's awfully quiet down there.
But it's so gorgeous when it's that cold too.
It's worth
It
the
really is.
the potential frostbite to get out there and see it.
I took my mom down there for the first time. Probably, it was cold. I want to say it was March.
Okay. She hadn't been out there?
Well, no. And, this is what I say. Have you ever seen Giant Springs in the winter? And she said, no, I never have. And I'm like, awesome. Let's go see it because it is really pretty.
Yeah.
And so I don't remember exactly when it was, but the wind was blowing. Surprise, surprise. And it gets a little more brisk down there because you've got North America's longest river. You've got the world's shortest river. You got the springs. And there's a lot of cold air in that area blowing onto you.
Yeah.
And so we walked it, did the fish hatchery visitor center, get back in the car, we're warming up, and I'm like, what did you think? What do you think the difference is between the winter and any other time? She's like, well, it's my first time ever being at the park. I'm like,
oh. I guess
so
we'll
I
start with
just
this.
assumed.
Right. You assume everyone's been there.
Yeah. Nope. That was her first time. So now I'm looking forward to taking her back.
In all the seasons.
Yes. And this is what it's like now.
And it is a really cool place because it's different every season.
It is. Yeah.
The winter, obviously, you get the frost and the steam and the birds that flock in there and the raptors and things that hang out in the area. So it's really cool. The springtime, it's just all the trees down there getting the leaves on them. It really helps you feel that coming spring and summer.
Waking up.
And summertime, it's amazing because you have those big mature trees that make the shade, and it's generally 10 degrees cooler down there than it is in town.
Yeah.
And the fall colors are just spectacular down there. So any season is amazing at Giant Springs.
And the neat part about it too, they're talking about the location being out of town, but in town, it's also on this, I don't know what to call it, very tourist row, hotspot row for things like you need to see and do when you come to Great Falls. So not only does the park run along the River's Edge Trail, so you can take the trail to and from the park, but you hit the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center, Giant Springs, and then on to Rainbow Dam. It's just you can spend a lot of time just on that one Giant Springs road there.
And what is that? A mile long road?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a couple miles probably, but it's jam packed with different things to see.
Yeah.
You said the Interpretive Center, the Region 4 FWP Fish, Wildlife, and Parks headquarters is there. They have a really incredible display in their lobby. The different trail systems that we have. Heritage Park, which is part of Giant Springs across the street. Yep. The dams, the access to the River's Edge Trail. The city has their bike skills park that is just adjacent to one of our trailheads at 67th Street. So it's in that short little section of road, there's a lot of stuff to do.
So how big is the park? Let's just start with square acres or feet
and
or whatever.
What all is actually included as part of Giant Springs State Park?
So it's kind of a complicated question, and so I'll give you the answer. The park is around 4,600 acres. Or 4,600 acres, sorry. So it's a decently large park, about 14 miles of Missouri River shoreline. So it's sort of a long,
that is not what I was expecting.
A long linear park. What a lot of people don't realize is that a large part of the park is owned by Northwestern Energy. And it's what's called the Lewis and Clark Heritage Greenway Conservation Easement, which is definitely a mouthful. But it's a section of land that Northwestern Energy has worked with the state of Montana to manage the recreational use on. So, we have around 30 miles of trail in the park that we manage. Wow. And a lot of that's on Northwestern Energy land. It's dirt single track trail that varies in difficulty from, beginner to intermediate, almost more advanced type stuff.
So from the time you leave the spring and you're going towards Rainbow Falls, that's all part of the park. And then based on what you just said, my assumption is from the South Shore Trailhead, further down is still part of the park.
Yeah, I mean, it gets really confusing in there. You know, as you enter Giant Springs Road off of River Drive, there's a mix of city and state property. The county owns part of the road. The Forest Service manages the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center area.
Yeah, is the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center part of the state park?
Technically,
That's
no.
federal
Technically, no. It's this little
Forest
island
Service.
of federal land surrounded by state.
Okay.
So you surround it?
Yeah.
Perfect.
But you know,
escape.
we work with them on a lot of different stuff. They actually manage a portion of trail that's on our property down past the Sulphur Springs that heads out to the Sulphur Springs.
Yeah.
So past the Sulphur Springs trailhead, they actually manage that section of trail for us. So
you're all the way down past Maroney Dam too, then? Like Cochrane Dam?
Yep.
Okay.
So the
Wow.
park basically extends from
Holy moly.
I didn't realize that was
from
all.
River Drive all the way down to near the Sulphur Springs, which is below
wow.
Maroney Dam.
Yeah.
And again, in between there's all sorts of different land ownership,
Yeah.
Northwestern Energy, City of Great Falls, Forest Service, private property that we have easements on. So it's a very complicated park.
Ecosystem of parks.
So my mind is on the south side of the river. And I know based on geography, because I was a champ, as you all remember from early episodes, the north side is where Sulphur Springs Trail Loop is.
Yes.
So the park covers portions of both sides of the river.
Yeah, we manage. So the state land actually extends from River Drive to about where the Lewis and Clark Trailhead is.
Okay.
And then down from there, the state of Montana manages some Northwestern Energy land from Lewis and Clark Trailhead to Whitmore Ravine.
Okay.
And once you cross over that all the trails that go down by Ryan Dam are all managed by the City of Great Falls. So again, there's a big mix in there.
Well, a lot of people involved. And we've always said the River's Edge Trail system is really a unique asset because of the public-private partnership. But I just thought there was like a public and a
not
a private, not
all of the
publics and privates partnership.
Yeah,
That's
no,
really cool to know.
It's really a big partnership between the City of Great Falls, the state of Montana, Northwestern Energy, and the River's Edge Trail Foundation. So it's a
A lot of people.
So if I get in trouble, if I litter or commit a crime, I'm going to be after like the state, federal, and private industries.
They're going to
be
start
after
at the
me.
federal. They're going to start with taking you immediately to prison because of the federal level, and then it'll just layer
trickle down.
Ooh, don't do
anything bad on the trail.
it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Just respect it. And
Don't jump in the springs. Yeah.
Yep.
We've done an entire episode. So if you want to go back, listeners, and review what you're supposed to do to respect the land and to recreate responsibly here in this area, it's really a good tip. So go back, listen to it. We can recap it here, but don't throw your garbage around. Don't leave your clothes laying around in the park, which our office is in a park. You see we don't have anything to do with the park, but there's a lot of random clothes that just appear in this park. And I'm like, how do you not notice that you've lost that piece of clothing?
Diabetes,
medical
medical equipment that no one seems to want to pick up.
We get that. We get that stuff all the time. There's more than you could write in a large book. The various things we find at different places and
pairs of underwear
make you shake your head.
I don't want to know the answer to that.
You know that there's been underwear found in that park.
Yes.
See, he's shaking his head.
Yeah, we're not answering that question. This is a family-friendly program.
Fine, I'm still curious.
So part of the park is the fish hatchery, correct?
Yeah.
It's not separate.
So we're all under the
feature.
umbrella of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. But the Parks and Outdoor Recreation Division is separate from the Hatchery Division.
Oh, okay.
So we are separate, but we work really closely together. Our infrastructure is very much tied together. They take water out of the Giant Springs to run their fish hatchery. It's the public doesn't realize it, and the public doesn't really need to realize it that it's separate. But the fish hatchery is a huge part of Giant Springs State Park. You know, the visitor center they have, the show pond. The other year when there was the incident with the fish in the show pond, I was amazed at this outcry that there was regarding that, and the support that the community showed the hatchery in the park as part of that. So yeah, the hatchery is a huge part of Giant Springs State Park, even though it's not exactly part of the park. It's in the park. So it's very, very important to the community.
And here's your tip, folks. When you go to Giant Springs State Park, make sure you have quarters, because you can get the food out of the machine at the show pond, and it is so much fun to feed those fish. And I assume it's
for both kids and
approved
adults.
food.
Yeah. A part of their diet.
Which is really important. Don't give them crap food. Like, don't bring your own.
Don't bring your Cheetos and throw them.
Or like your goldfish flakes. Don't bring that.
Yeah, no, I got a lesson in fish food recently, and there's a lot that goes into it. It's its whole own industry. So yeah, you know, the show pond is a really big part. Feeding the fish, and it's not just any fish in there. We have albino fish in there. You know, there's fish that a lot of people have never seen before.
Yeah.
So it's a really cool experience.
What in general, what are the main kinds of fish that live in there?
So largely it's rainbow trout and brown trout that they raise in there. And
things you would normally find along the Missouri.
And they stock, and again, I'm not an expert on the hatchery, but they stock you know, streams and ponds all over north central Montana out of there. So you know, it's not just the Springs area or the Missouri that they stock. They do stock the Missouri River outside of the Springs area. They also stock the fishing pond that we have just upstream from the Giant Springs, but they stock fish all over this part of the state.
So in more recent years, and it might just be my memory, not anything other than my lack of ability to remember, but more recent years, there's been a lot more events happening at Giant Springs State Park with live music and trivia nights. And am I correct? Has that been going on for a long time?
So, you know, my experience here has been the last 3 years, 3.5 years.
So you can also say just recently we started doing this.
But I mean, you know, it's you know, things like COVID have made it a lot harder. You know, the first year I was here, 2019, we had concerts down there. We had car shows. We had our annual Fall Family Fest that we typically do every fall. So we had a lot of big events, and then, you know, 2020 rolled around and the world got turned upside down, and we really didn't do much. And we've slowly been coming back from that. So yeah, this last year we did have a concert down there. We had Robin Halliday Quist come and do a show for us. We've had some speaker series down there. We had an individual from the Department of Mines that has done studies on the Giant Springs came and gave a talk about the aquifer and the springs, which was really cool.
Oh, neat.
We have for the last 3 years been doing trivia in the park. We had an AmeriCorps member back in the park back in 2019 that worked at the park that was really into trivia. And she had this idea, hey, let's do trivia every Wednesday evening. And I was like, oh, okay, I don't understand, but let's try. And the community has loved it. It's been great. You know, every Wednesday from July through September, we do trivia in the park. And we've had anywhere between, you know, I think the highest we had this year was over 50 people down there doing trivia.
Oh man.
So it's been pretty cool. We do our Junior Ranger series every year. We do different events down there. We just had a bat party in the park last week. We partnered with the public library to do a program down there, which was really cool. So yeah, I don't know if I'd say we're doing a whole bunch more, but we're trying to offer the public different things down there, whether it's recreational activities or educational stuff. You know, we're trying to offer things to the community to come to the park and enjoy and learn. And for the most part, all those things are free. There's no cost to come to them. So it's
that's really cool.
Yeah.
So on the trivia, is it all about Giant Springs and state parks, or is it broad-based trivia, or is it all science? Like how many milliliters?
We're gauging how
capable we might be.
It varies. It varies widely. You know, we'll have different staff develop questions over the summer just to keep it different and fresh. So we'll have state park topics. We'll have Montana topics. You know, last night we had a math a math category and literature.
Good,
So
I wasn't there for that.
So there's definitely a lot of different things, a lot of different categories that we do. So we try to keep it fresh for people, but it's just sometimes it's tough to go back to the park in the evening to work after you've been there all day.
Sure.
But it's hard to describe how beautiful it is down there in the evening doing trivia right next to the springs. It's just you couldn't ask for a better setting to do something like that.
Oh.
So we only have one more coming up this year, but we'll be back again in 2023 starting in June with trivia again.
Yeah, so plan
next Wednesday.
summer,
Next Wednesday.
which will be in the past when this podcast comes out.
Okay.
But you
So-
can go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, hurry up, get in your car, make your trip. Scratch that. It will have already happened.
It will have already happened, yes. So plan for next year.
So
When
June.
you come next year,
Yeah.
plan to be here on a Wednesday,
It'll
right?
it'll give people time to
Yeah,
to practice
to
that.
coordinate.
Exactly.
Do your
Yeah,
research.
Yeah.
study up on math and science.
So from June to September.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool.
We should do that. We should plan next summer a tourism team night to
I was
go
just
there
thinking that.
and show how much we don't know.
Right.
Live up to our podcast name.
And I was thinking maybe we could go every week and then
Mm-hmm.
have T-shirts and then try to do trash talking and
I like that.
like become the winners and and every week, like, hey, we won last week and you're not gonna beat us. And then I thought that's a big commitment and I don't think we're that smart.
Well, you know what I see happening
Wow.
here is you guys are good at talking into these microphones, and I sometimes feel bad for the crowd because I'm the one that MCs a lot. Or
No.
so we could have you
We
guys
could,
come down there and
Yeah, we would love to host trivia.
We could so host trivia. We
Yes.
could come up with our own things. People may never know the answers to it, but we've thrown some feelers out. Like, hey, we'd be up to
Yeah.
being trivia hosts with our own one set of questions. Because I don't think we
We
can
could
come
also
up with
just
more.
read their questions too.
Well, there's that too.
Yeah.
But
and the best part about hosting is you don't have to know the answers.
you don't have to know
Right.
the answer. You,
feel
look smart
feel
because you
pretty
have
good
the
because
answer.
you know the answers.
you're like, oh yeah, I know that. And then people are like, oh, you didn't. I'll make fun of them. You didn't know that?
Mm.
Seems
This
like
seems
a really.
this seems like a good gig for
Oh
us.
man.
We can continue to pretend like we know
We
what
know
we're
stuff.
talking about. Perfect. Okay, on that, we get all kinds of odd questions from people who stop by the visitor center or online or things like that, which we're happy to attempt to answer. What are some weird? Have you gotten any what are weird questions people have asked about the park or the springs or anything? Maybe your visitors are
Better.
Well, we send our visitors your way, so it's the
So
same.
we know.
Yeah.
We know who's showing up at the park.
Yeah, putting me on the spot here.
Yeah,
Man, we
that's-
get all sorts of weird requests, and it's hard to pinpoint what is
Yeah.
some of the weirdest. We get lots of photo requests. So you mentioned earlier the mermaid shoot, which is that was a pretty weird one. But we've had all sorts of requests, so like boudoir shoots down there, and
yeah.
People want to bring their classic cars down to park next to the springs to do shoots and things like that. So. I know there's probably a lot that aren't really appropriate for this show, but yeah.
Do people often ask if they can take some of the water home with them?
Yeah, we do get a lot of questions, although I feel like for the most part, like if people want to do that, they're just going to go
They're
and
just
do
gonna
it,
do it.
regardless of what we say.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's true. Just
I would have
take
never
their-
thought to
take their
just
water bottle and
go rogue.
well, you're not a rebel, are you?
Obviously, I'd be like, I was just going to ask permission and then be told no.
And obviously it's not something that we condone, but we're not going to go down there and tell someone, no, you
Smack
can't
it
do
out of
that.
their hand. Yeah.
We always tell them, because we've gotten that question a few times here at our base camp, and we always tell people, you can go buy a bottle of Giant Springs water at the
There's
gas
Giant
station.
Springs water.
That's coming from
the
there.
company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, there's
Dunk it right in and put it on the shelf.
There
Just
there
kidding.
is that opportunity, and I would encourage people to go that route versus dealing with the birds and the fish
Well,
and the different
yeah.
things that are in the springs.
The yellow monkey flower can't be a good source of anything.
Love the name, but it sounds probably not like something you want to consume.
But we always get the locals that bring up, and I don't even remember exactly the year, but there was a flood at one point, and it in the history of Great Falls, and it messed up the city's water treatment facility. And so they actually encourage people to go down to Giant Springs and get water out of the springs. So there has been times in the past where it's been utilized that way.
Well, I think people hear springs and you often think like, oh, there's these springs around the country or whatever that supposedly if you drink from it or whatever, so maybe people are thinking that.
But I'm sorry.
It's not
First,
the same.
156 million gallons of water per day.
Coming up. Yeah.
We've got some to spare, is my guess.
Right.
I mean, all it's doing
not a
is
big deal.
flowing into the world's shortest river and
then the
Missouri.
longest river. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. A bucket of water is probably not going to hurt anybody.
Yeah. Where, this is probably a silly question. Where is all that water coming from?
Oh, this is my favorite question.
So having just heard about this from one of our speakers recently, I can talk to it pretty well. So it comes from the Madison Aquifer, which is, kind of like an underground ocean that's under a huge part of this area, Montana, the Dakotas, Wyoming.
Oh.
So it's a huge aquifer that
Wow.
that is under our feet. So at the Giant Springs, the aquifer is about 300 to 400 feet below the ground. So the water that's shooting up or bubbling up through the ground, it's coming from 300 to 400 feet below. And kind of what they have figured out is the Little Belt Mountains is a recharge zone for the Madison Aquifer, because we have that Madison limestone that's up there and it's exposed. And if you've ever been to Lewis and Clark Caverns, which is in the Madison limestone, you'll know that it's porous. It's got holes in it. It's got cracks and things. So it accepts that water. So a lot of the streams in the Little Belts, like Belt Creek, they actually lose flow as they go down because the water is going into the aquifer, where most places streams gain water as more tributaries flow into them. So the Little Belt Mountains is that recharge zone. So what they figured is, as water enters that recharge zone, whether it's rainfall or snow melts, it takes 26 years for it to work its way through that limestone and the aquifer down to the Giant Springs. And what they figure is Giant Springs, where it's at, is kind of the low point in the area. It's where the river is, so it's kind of that low point. So the water flows down and it hits that low point, and there's a weak spot there in the rock, and it's able to work its way up out of there.
Wow. It's amazing too. It's so consistent, right? I mean, you think about like Yellowstone, Old Faithful. I know that that's a thing, but it's still just pretty amazing that there's that much water consistently coming up in that spot, that one particular spot.
Did the speaker, or maybe you already know, about the temperature of the water? I'd like to get into that and why it stays so constant.
Yeah.
So I think the reason that it stays that constant temperature is because it's underground. It's in a controlled environment, and as it works its way up, it comes up quick enough that it doesn't have a lot of chance to change.
Oh.
So again, it's in the aquifer. It's underground, so it's in that controlled area, and it just stays at that temperature. And as it comes up, it doesn't have a chance to warm or cool before it hits the surface.
And it's 54 degrees, right? That's
Yes.
the constant
Fahrenheit.
temperature. Fahrenheit? Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. Is that measured at the is that 54 degrees like where it's coming out at the bottom,
Or at
or
the
like
top?
in the middle? Because I would still think the top would get like cold in the winter. Obviously not icing over because it's moving, but I would still think the top would get colder than that.
I guess I can't answer that
That's fine. I don't know what
100%
I'm talking about.
accurately, but
Give it a shot.
with our little rudimentary thermometers that we use for programming and things, it always stays pretty consistently that 54ish degrees on top. And again,
Wow.
there's so much water coming out of there every second that it doesn't have that chance to really cool or warm before it flows out.
I think people would be surprised at how much 156 million gallons of water would be in the course of a day.
It sounds like a lot, but
So basically,
it's hard to wrap your head around.
What kind of we've been told by people is it's enough water that you could supply a very large city in the United States with enough water out of the springs each day to cover, people's needs for showering, for toilets, for cooking. So, it would, I think the city of Great Falls would probably have water to spare if they pulled everything out of the springs for the community here.
That's incredible.
So it's a lot of water. It is a lot of water.
Wow.
So then the next most natural question is, why is there not more water flowing over, let's say, Rainbow Falls?
Yeah, why is the Missouri not just overflowing?
Like, I get
right
the whole
down from
water
that?
going through the dam to produce electricity, but there's also got to be flow going over or through or
Yeah.
out or it will flood us,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah,
That just seems like
Where
there
does
would
it
be
go?
more water going.
I would think so. Yeah.
And again, this is not exactly my area of expertise, but because I'm associated with
We
Northwestern
can make that
Energy,
a trivia question for next year.
you know, it's a bigger thing than just the Giant Springs. You know, it's all about water holding, starting up in the Helena area at those reservoirs.
Wow.
So, you know, Northwestern Energy, they're in the business of making power, so they're pretty
Yeah.
knowledgeable about how much water they need to maintain or retain in these reservoirs. And there's some reservoirs that are run of river, which is what the ones around here are, where they're not holding huge amounts of water back.
Mm-hmm.
But there's like Holter Reservoir where it's a big reservoir, they're holding water back. So they have it pretty well down, and they use projections and things to know what it's going to take to get through the year. And, you know, it's been a dry year here, so we haven't had a lot of water that's been going over those dams. But on the typical year, if it allows for it with you know, the water that's available, Northwestern Energy typically does what they call like kind of recreational releases on the weekends, where they'll actually let more water out over the
Yeah.
falls so people can see, you know, what they look like.
Mm-hmm.
So we have an in with the dam expert, Jeremy. We just have to bring him back and go, you know, we were doing the
Yeah.
math, Jeremy, on 156 million gallons of water per day.
Yeah. Where
We were
does it
just
go?
wondering what's going on.
Where does it go?
We should know
Yeah.
more
Mhm.
about that.
Yeah, that's hard for me to wrap my little brain around.
So you have your own events out there at Giant Springs State Park. Can people rent the park for weddings, family reunions,
Yes,
class reunions?
we do have 2 reservable areas in the park. There's one called Central, which is on the hill above the Giant Springs. It's a cement pad with like 6 tables on it. And then the other one's across the street in Heritage Park, and it's the Heritage Reservation area that's similar, but it's got some shelters over it. So, yeah, those can be reserved on our website, and the public definitely does reserve them. Yeah, we'll have anything from weddings to reunions, just to picnics, celebrations of life down there. So all sorts of things happen in those reservation areas. So it's if the park is special to you, there is those opportunities to make sure you have an area for your event.
Yeah.
The I have seen though, like brides and grooms getting
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna call it staged photos.
Yeah.
I don't know if they've just like driven down there or they got dressed up one Thursday afternoon. I don't know if they've just
Why
got
not?
married or not.
Yeah.
But I've seen that, and there's really no reservation for that because they're just
It's
exploring
just a
the
public
park, getting their pictures taken in the park.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a difference between having a wedding ceremony down there versus
Oh, yeah.
pictures
Just
in the park.
pictures, yeah.
You know, I'd say Giant Springs is one of the more popular places in town for photos, whether it's family photos, wedding photos, senior photos, you know, any
Yeah.
sort of those things. So we definitely have a lot of photographers that use the park for that sort of a thing. You know, our biggest what we feel our responsibility at Giant Springs is to ensure the average visitor has a good experience there. So someone coming to the park for the first time, we want them to come and experience the nature, to see those recreational opportunities that we have. And we don't always want them to go away thinking, oh, well, it was beautiful, but there was this wedding that was happening right next to the spring. So we have a lot of rules revolving around weddings because they come with a lot of baggage usually.
Yep.
So we don't allow those weddings to happen down next to the springs. They can happen at one of the reservable sites. But then, you know, they can definitely take their pictures down there by the springs and things. So, yeah.
There seems to be a lot of area to explore, and I don't know how to properly talk about that. But as you head out away from the spring on the River's Edge Trail System towards Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center, there's like little trails that jump off like the paved portion and go back into... Well, we went all the way to a culvert, and I told the kids I was with, like, oh, this is where all the water flows in to go into the spring. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah. And
One
there's
of
like
your
all
claims.
these shaled rock things, and then there's a bridge out there. Then you can walk up on top of the rocks that look down towards. Is all that like like developed trail, like about that, or is that just I'm following someone else's footsteps that have just veered off the path just to see what was happening?
So yeah, we have, again, I think I mentioned earlier, we have around 30 miles of trail in the park. So there's a lot of developed, maintained trails in the park. There's also a lot that aren't designated trails, but people use them. And some of those will never close off because they're there. They lead to places that people obviously want to be. So yeah, I mean, there's just lots of cool little bits of landscape there that you wouldn't expect. You mentioned that creek area with the shale. It's just really cool to see how the water has eroded all that away. And there's the cliffs along the river.
Yeah.
There's the different coulees and things that are down further on our North Shore trails. So it's a really diverse landscape. There's lots of cool things. It is definitely worth mentioning for people to always think when they're out and about, like, am I on a designated trail or am I off on a social trail?
Right.
People might want to use those social trails or make their own, but people don't often think that, we don't have the capacity to maintain those trails. And it's causing more issues on the landscape. Once you start making those trails, and if they're not designed well, rain events and things will cause erosion on them, and then you'll end up with issues that shouldn't have happened because it was a trail that wasn't intended to be there.
I call those the worn paths. Like, you look at it and you're like, it's really worn.
It's
I
like
wonder
a
if
game
it's
trail, but humans did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just a lot of exploring that can be done in that area. And then there are fishing platforms.
The little ponds right down the trail.
Is that part of
Is that yours?
Is that under your purview?
Yep, that's our fishing pond area, which is it's just kind of an area for families to be able to go and fish. That it's stocked with fish from the hatchery. They'll throw some of the big ones in from the show pond every once in a while just to entice people.
Someone really excited.
I haven't seen a lot of them caught, but you'll see them every once in a while swimming out there, and it gets people excited to see them.
Yeah.
Although I think those fish are wiser than most people realize. They've spent most of their life in that show pond area.
Yeah.
Studying our behavior.
Eating really good, and So yeah, but yeah, no, that's a great area for people to go and fish. It's right on the trail. It's easily accessible.
Are those required to be thrown back
those
into
fish?
the pond?
No, they can be kept as long as you're following all the state's fishing rules and
yeah.
regulations. Yeah, that you can keep fish out of the reservoir as well as that fishing pond area. And I mean, you can fish anywhere in the Missouri in the park there. The only places you can't fish is the Giant Springs and the Roe River. But there's, again, 14 miles of shoreline.
And the show pond.
Yeah,
the show pond.
The hatchery itself.
Might be enticing, but
yeah. Ooh, easy cast. Yeah.
So let's talk about my favorite feature in Giant Springs State Park, the bridge with 0 railings. How on earth, Alex, have we maintained, which I hope we continue to, a bridge that allows equal opportunity to fall into the Missouri or the Giant Springs?
I've often found myself wondering the same thing.
I think it's the awesomest thing in the world.
It's really neat.
I agree. And if you've been out there recently, you might notice that it's in need of some repair. Yeah. So not too far down the road, we will be exploring what we have to do to rehabilitate that cement bridge that goes around the Giant Springs. And I can't even begin to guess what requirements we're going to have to follow on that. I'm hoping that maybe there's some historical precedent because it didn't have the railing, although maybe at one time it did that I wasn't aware of. So yeah, it's a unique feature, and one that every time I take my kids out there, they're getting a little older now, but it used to be that they would just be absolutely terrified every time we walked on that bridge. That's part of the appeal, I think.
I'm still a little uncertain myself when I walk on that. Like,
I always try to get my dog, make sure my dog doesn't go off the edge either. I mean, not that it's deep right there, but slippery and
Well, my favorite is in the winter. After it gets snow, I'll snow blow some of the areas we can't get with our equipment, and being out there with a snowblower, I've almost lost it in the river a couple times. So you
and
gotta.
that's the time of year you really don't want to fall in.
As tragic as it will be, Alex, to hear the news report that they have to fish you out of the river, I will enjoy that moment. I'll be like, finally, we made the news.
Slipped. Oh my gosh.
It'll be awful.
We want him to be
It'll
okay.
probably be me.
Yeah. All right. This is, yep. You're just talking a lot about this, and karma's going to come back for you.
But the bridge over the Roe River has railings, so you're safe there.
Yeah.
Yes, that one is safe.
And we haven't really talked about the Roe River yet,
We haven't.
which is okay. It is. We tell people this. There's some people who disagree at, what is it, Oregon?
Oregon really wants to stake a claim on it, and I
The
know
world's shortest river.
201 feet.
Yes.
I think it seems like it's an undisputable fact. Like how, and we
And
will
ours
have
is
Oregon.
natural.
We'll have Oregon on, and they can state their case.
Yeah.
But it seems like if it's not shorter than
Isn't theirs
201
man-made
feet,
too?
I have no clue.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Roe River at one time was the Guinness World Record
At
holder
one time.
as the shortest river in the world, 201 feet. And that was all done by a local 4th grade class at Lincoln Elementary.
That's
Well,
amazing.
go fourth
Back in
graders.
the
Yeah.
80s, I think they pushed for that and they got it done. Then the Dee River in Oregon took issue with that and
Still taking it.
and had words with the Guinness World Record folks. You know, the Dee River flows into the ocean, so it's a tidal river. So based on whether it's high tide or low tide, it can be longer or shorter than the Roe River.
Ours
Oh.
is consistent.
Yeah, but I think the Guinness World Records, they just took the high road and said this is a record we're not going to keep anymore. So
Oh.
it's not a record that they keep currently.
But we can still say
So it
world's
just
shortest
stays-
river. It's
just
just
stays in dispute
not, yeah.
between us and
I mean,
Oregon.
it makes sense to me that ours is continually the shortest.
Right.
Well, there's
It's
may
consistent.
Sometimes be
Sometimes
be,
is.
yes.
Our world's shortest river is sometimes the shortest.
Depends what time of day you're talking about here. Yeah.
That doesn't seem like a strong claim to fame.
No. It's also interesting. We're saying worlds, and we're talking about Montana and Oregon. It's just kind of funny that of anywhere in the world, the dispute's happening between us and our neighbors, like 2 states
It
away.
doesn't really surprise me.
Yeah.
Like, I can see other people in the world going, why are they this caught up over this one thing? Look at this river. It's 3 feet long.
Well, I mean, it just gives you that perspective on how much water is coming out of the springs that it can make a river that flows 201 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Into
yeah.
the Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Nation's longest.
So I mean, just in that little area, there's a lot packed in between the springs and the Roe River and the Hatchery and the Show Pond, and so, there's a lot just in that one little spot. And one thing that I always tell people is Giant Springs is a lot more than just the Giant Springs and the Roe River and the Hatchery. A lot of people don't realize that we have the amount of trails that we do.
Well, that blew me away today.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so that I think that's one part of the park that is not as well known as it probably should
Yeah.
be. Out on the North Shore lands, again, those are those Northwestern Energy lands that we manage the recreational use on. Without them, that the city wouldn't have the access to those trails that are on public land that's right outside of town. You'd have to drive to the Little Belts or somewhere to find those trails. So
Yeah.
having access to these trails that are 10, 15 minutes from downtown is pretty cool.
And then I think one of the weirdest components of that is there's an area right near there. I'm not a duck hunter or a bird hunter, so I don't know, but you can bird hunt somewhere in there. So you could be at
Oh,
Giant
really?
Springs, all of a sudden hear gunshots,
Oh.
and it's all legal and okay.
Huh.
Yeah, it's
I did not know that.
it is an interesting thing that sometimes I have to re-familiarize myself with every
Sure.
fall as
Like you're ready to jump in the
Yeah.
vehicle
the
and chase them
gunshots
down. You're like, what are you
sound out.
doing?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's hunting allowed in Giant Springs. There's waterfowl hunting along the river. There's also, you can hunt for bigger game on those North Shore lands, on the Northwestern Energy lands. You can hunt for deer and things out there as well with some
Wow.
areas with archery or shotgun, other areas with actual rifles. So it's it's
Interesting.
cool that it's a park that actually gives those opportunities as well.
Interesting.
All right, Alex, the big question is there any future talk about allowing camping at Giant Springs State Park?
Oh, yeah, we do get asked that.
Yeah, and this will probably be one he's like, yeah, next question, please.
No, it's something that has been talked about. You know, I've seen documents that the park has from back in the 80s where they were discussing camping options. And I mean, you guys working here, I'm sure you know that we do not have a lot of camping opportunities in this town. So I do believe it's something that would be beneficial to the park, to the community. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as let's just build a park. You know, I think there's some zoning issues that have to be worked out. And there's infrastructure issues. You know, we're surrounded by city limits, but we don't have city water and sewer that come out to the park. So there's a lot of logistics to consider. But it's definitely something that has been on our radar, and it's something that I would like to push for in the future. That doesn't mean that it's ever going to happen. You know, it's not some simple thing to do. It's going to take a lot of money and time and effort to get that going. But, you know, only having 2 campgrounds in the town is tough. And for whatever reason, I think it's because of our day use reservation sites being listed on the state of Montana's campground reservation system. When you Google camping in Great Falls, Giant Springs often comes up as the number 1 choice. So we spend all summer fielding phone calls of, how much is a spot?
Yeah.
So, you're like,
no, that's not how this works.
We have a unique problem that somehow when you Google AAA for Great Falls, our phone number is listed, but it's listed as part of, you know, this is what to experience in Great Falls, and here's the visitor information line. And then people call and they're like, I've been a AAA member for the last 25 years and I need this book. And I'm like,
that's nice.
Okay.
Good for you. We don't have that.
It's good to know other people suffer from the same.
Or people will come into the
we
visitor center too and either ask if it's AAA or ask where to go for it. Yeah, there's a lot of overlap with AAA.
And I know zero about AAA.
Yeah, me too. Just that all I know is that their office does not exist in Great Falls anymore.
Nope, and
we're
give them a
not
phone number.
Yeah.
There's a side hustle opportunity I see.
I can just start making my own book. This one, it's a new copy, a draft edition of the AAA book you'll need.
It's a
It'll
specialty
be $20.
You just pay that right to me. It's fine.
Yep, write the check, leave it blank, cash only.
So is the park ever closed?
So yeah, the park is open sunrise to sunset every day of the year.
Okay.
So technically, yes, the park does close at sunset. So people aren't allowed to be in the park after sunset. So yeah, no camping at this point in time. But in general, outside of that, you know, there's usually never any closures unless we have a construction project going up or going on, or you know, in the last couple of years, we've had some pretty big wind events that have actually made it unsafe to be in the Giant Springs area. So we have had to close it down for some random things, but no, it's open sunrise to sunset.
Holidays?
It's open on the holidays. The ranger station may not always be
Sure.
staffed, but the park will be open.
You can always go there. Okay.
And we've been completely remiss in sharing this. There's a fee to go to the park.
Yeah, if you're not a Montana resident
With a license
with the
plate.
specific license
thing.
that you've checked when you renewed your license.
So Montana residents, when they register their vehicles, they pay a fee of, I think it's $9 right now. And that covers their day use entry. You can opt out of it, but you know, you visit one state park once and it basically covers your fee on that. So yeah, the out-of-state residents don't have that opportunity to pay that fee. So there is an $8 per vehicle fee for non-Montana residents, and that covers your Montana State Park day use fee for the day. So we always tell people, you know, hey, you've been to Giant Springs, now go to First People's Buffalo Jump, go to Sluice Boxes. Those other parks we have right here, go check them out because you've already paid for it. And then go ahead.
Is there a annual pass for the state parks?
There is. We do sell a $50 annual pass. Again, that's good for 1 year from the date of purchase. That covers your day use entry into state parks. It also gives out-of-state residents in-state fees for camping. So you get to pay those in-state fees instead of the out-of-state fees. So it saves some money. There's also 7-day passes. So if you're only going to be in Montana for a week, but you're going to visit some of those parks, then you can get a 7-day pass for $35 and it gives you those same perks for those 7 days.
I think there are 53 or 57 state parks.
I want to say 56, I think.
So I was in the range. Have you gone to them all?
No.
Where are you? Oh, you've been here for 3 years. Where are you from?
I was from Idaho.
Okay.
So I grew up in little town Salmon, Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And my wife got a job up here, and we had some kids, and the commuting back and forth 5 hours wasn't working.
It's a bit of a commute.
So this job came open, and I've been in and out of Great Falls since 2011 with my wife working here, and I've been to Giant Springs more times than I can count. And I saw that job, and I was like, oh, it's a pretty place. Let me check it out. And, was lucky enough to get it, and it's a pretty awesome to be able to show up to Giant Springs every morning to go to work.
That's your office. Yeah.
There's definitely challenges with the position, but a lot of times just a quick walk around out there will calm me down and
readjust
get me back where I need to be. So it's a great place to be.
You're just not the king of Giant Springs. You're the the king of other things, or the manager of other things. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the way that the Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks is kind of set up their Park and Outdoor Recreation Division is we have recreation managers, which is what I am. So I manage Giant Springs State Park, Ackley Lake State Park, which is out by Hobson, Montana, about a half an hour from Great Falls, and then a couple fishing access sites along the Missouri, and then the Judith River Wildlife Management Area. So a pretty big variety of things to take care of.
Yeah.
It's like they each has to have different things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's not like they're all the Giant Spring. They're all very unique places.
They are, yes. and luckily we have some help. The state has their maintenance bureau that takes care of a lot of the maintenance at those sites.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not something that I always have to worry about. But there's a lot that goes on. Like at Ackley Lake, there's a friends group that's really active, and we're trying to get a swimming area with a dock established out there. And the Judith Wildlife Management Area has its own issues with camping and being closed for part of the year for wildlife to be able to be in that area and winter over.
And that's just north of Sapphire. Well, I'm saying north. Like I know my directions. Just outside of Sapphire Village.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And that's about a 9,400 acre section of land too, so it's a big area as well.
And then come hunting season, it gets crazy over there.
I bet. I haven't been there.
Yeah. And then they close, like Alex was just saying. And then there's like a day it opens. The first day it opens, people go out and go shed hunting.
Oh, shed hunting. Yeah, that's a big thing around here.
I had never seen the first day of shed hunting there before.
Yeah.
I don't know why we just ended up in the area, but I'm like, what are all these people doing here? There's just abandoned vehicles all everywhere along the road. And I'm like, what is going on? And my husband finds like, first day of shed hunt. And I'm like, oh, well, that makes more sense as to why these people all have abandoned vehicles along the road.
I do always enjoy watching the news reports on those days. And a lot of it's that Sun River Wildlife Management Area up on the front. But yeah, there's just people running out across the land and people on horses. And
it seems like if you're going to go, my husband has determined that horseback is the way to go if you're going to shed hunt.
That's what he's determined.
But he's gotten to go and he did a news story on opening day for the Sun River one, and it just looked like just a really neat, just
utter
experience.
Chaos.
Yeah.
It's kind of like an Easter egg hunt for adults.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of crazy because you have people on foot, ATV, horses, and they're just go. It seems crazy.
It's insane.
But fun.
Well, those are all big areas. Mm-hmm. Which one's your favorite?
What child is your favorite?
I mean, my office is at Giant Springs, so I spend the vast majority of my time dealing with Giant Springs, and I think I've formed that really intimate bond with that park. So that's my favorite. But I mean, I appreciate Ackley Lake for what it is. It's a really special place to the people in that part of the state, because there's not a lot of camping opportunities. There's not a lot of reservoirs like that. So it's one of those where it's cool because you also get to see how important each of these places are to people for different reasons.
Do you ever get to go stay at the White and Green House at the Judith River Ranger station overnight?
I have not.
Oh.
No. There's a number of things that I haven't done yet that are on my bucket list, like actually getting in the springs. And
I would have thought
Ooh.
like you had to like once every quarter go out there and spend like 3 days or something.
Well, this has been a recent change in so
that makes more sense.
It was just this last spring where I was given some of these additional areas to
Uh-huh.
manage. So I'm still figuring a lot of them out. So there's definitely more work that I need to do out there and learn, but.
If you need me to go out there for like 3 or 4 days and catalog grasses, I would volunteer to do that if I can stay at the Green and White House.
What is the Green and White House?
There's this like
Green
house.
and White House.
I don't know how else to explain it to you, Shannon.
Well, I mean,
It looks
what's so
like where
special?
rangers would hang out, like
Okay.
their offices, but it's a house and
Oh.
it's got a garage and it's got this beautiful fence and it's right there on the game range. And
and it's green and white.
yes, it is.
And I'd tell you more about it, but I'm still learning.
Yeah. Well, it's not like a place you can rent. It's like obviously their asset, the
Yeah.
forest. So it's not like you just get to go up and knock on the door and like, hey, can I borrow a cup of sugar or rent it for a week? Or
Could try, see what happens.
I wanted to. There was some people out there one day and I'm like, oh, I'm going to go up and ask about this. And my husband's like, no, you're not.
It's like, please don't.
I just want to learn. So we'll have you back once you learn about the Green and White
There
House.
you go.
And give us all the details about it.
You got
There
it.
we go.
For now, Robert's just going to try to keep her from
Yeah, it's gotta
educating
be-
herself about the
It's got to be
Green and
fun
White House.
living with me, right? I did the same thing with missile silos. Like, what happens there? Like, how far down is it? How big is it? Do they have
Yeah,
bunk
you
beds?
can't just
Is there-
walk up and knock on the door
No.
there. No, wouldn't advise
They
that.
just get to come up and play basketball because some of them have basketball hoops. And
I remember very clearly my first experience driving around out in the forest and being like, I'm out in the middle of nowhere. And then I come around the corner and there's a convoy of Humvees coming at me. I'm like, what is this?
What did I do? Why is the military after me? Yeah.
there we go. Well, Alex, thanks for hanging out with us, telling us the things that you know about Giant Springs State Park, confirming the things I think I know about Giant Springs State Park, and all the other duties that you have. It's been fun, I think.
We'll continue to send people your way anytime. And I want to stress that too, because obviously it's October for when this podcast will come out. Any time of year is a great time to go visit Giant Springs. Obviously the trivia and things like that are in the summer, but fall when the leaves are changing, gorgeous. Winter is just a whole other stunning atmosphere. So any time of year, Giant Springs has to be on your list if you come through Great Falls.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep, just dress appropriately.
Yes. Don't fall in. Yeah.
Use your noggin a little bit when you're out there. And if you need help learning about recreating responsibly, we have resources for that, and we can teach you how to layer like an onion and get ready for any kind of weather that will happen. And as you're listening, this is like episode 90.
We're getting really close.
It
Yes.
might be 101.
No.
Who knows?
No.
110.
No.
Who knows?
No, it'll be under 100.
Okay.
I have it planned out.
Okay. It's under 100, which
Yes.
means the 100th episode is coming up,
Very
and
soon.
that is going to be epic.
Yeah, we're really excited for that.
Not that this one wasn't, but
Alex was
caught
like,
up.
all right. Well, thanks.
get caught up. Enjoy the musings of us for all the previous 90-some episodes. And they're going to be super helpful in you planning your trip to Great Falls, Montana. And we cannot wait to see your bright, happy, healthy, smiling face here in Montana's base camp for art and adventure, Great Falls, Montana.
We're no damn experts as the recorded claims from Great Falls, Montana, covering what you need to know about this amazing damn town. Damn, that felt good.